Good afternoon. I'm Kate Stanley, Program Director at the Center for Communication. Welcome to Office Hours with ViacomCBS. Today is Virtual Community Day at ViacomCBS, an annual day of service. It's a commitment across the organization to dedicate a day of service and help create an impact-minded workforce. This year's theme is Find Your Impact. Through workshops, events, and do-good suggestions, ViacomCBS is challenging employees to identify the causes that matter most to them and find a way to give back that is meaningful to them and the community. And with 25 countries and offices around the world activating across 24 hours, it is truly a global day of giving back. We're so grateful that the following speakers are joining us here today for this very special day. Tanya Smith is Senior Manager of Editorial at ViacomCBS Creative and Strategy. Neil Wade is Manager of Animated Current Series at Nickelodeon. Amanda Cary is Vice President of Entertainment Publicity at Showtime Networks. And Sam Dusenbury is Technical Manager at CBS Sports. We're going to kick things off by asking our speakers to introduce themselves, what they do, and tell us a bit about their day-to-day at ViacomCBS. Now I'd like to turn it over to introductions from our speakers. Let's start with Tanya.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here with everyone, and I'm really looking forward to this. So a little bit about me. I was an English major in college. I began my career in public relations, and I would say my career has been made of pivots. So when I got into my sort of first gig doing PR, really the way that I explained that I could handle that was, that I have a lot of writing in my background, and I could really, I could take on writing press releases, and there was some, web retail site copy stuff that I thought I could really do well with that was part of the job. And that was all in Seattle. And then, after a few years of doing PR, I was getting some exposure to coming out to New York. And ultimately decided that that was a move that I wanted to make. And so when I moved to New York, I continued working in PR, and then another pivot took place. So that was my pivot from really public relations focused work to kind of through a connection through friends of friends. I met someone who was working at ViacomCBS and who ended up becoming my boss. And I spoke with her about kind of the opportunities of the role that turned into the role that I have now. And that was really about, kind of proving that through all the writing that I've been doing with public relations and communications, that I could really then pivot again into copywriting. And so in the role that I have now, I work with Creative and Strategy, and Creative and Strategy is an internal creative agency that really serves all of ViacomCBS on kind of a corporate level. So anytime that ViacomCBS needs to show up as one organization, when we merged, when Viacom and CBS merged, almost 2 years ago, we needed to figure out what was our new logo, what's our mission statement, what's our kind of brand identity. That's the kind of work that Creative and Strategy really drives. And so on a day-to-day level, my copywriting work is around any kind of comms that need to happen for the entire company, and then any comms that the company needs to do to kind of the external partners, whether that's to the industry. We're not as much a consumer facing, like ViacomCBS is not a consumer facing company in the traditional sense that like the brands within ViacomCBS are. But when we need to talk about ViacomCBS, the Creative and Strategy group is the group that does that. So that's a very kind of quick overview of where I've been, where I am now, and I'll hand it off to Amanda to introduce herself.
Thanks, Tanya. Hi, everybody. I am Amanda Cary. I'm so happy to be here with you all. A little bit about me. I graduated from Santa Clara University in Northern California with a degree in communications, and then started my career at NBC Universal in the PAGE program there. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar at all with the PAGE program, but it's a one-year training program for recent grads who want to get into entertainment but aren't exactly sure sure what that looks like or what that means. So you're able to try out different rotations around the company. So during my time in the Page program, I did rotations with the digital media marketing group at Saturday Night Live, the Conan O'Brien show when it was still in New York, and at USA Network on their publicity team. And that is really where I fell in love with publicity, sort of learned what it was. And so when my year in the Page program was done, I joined Bravo Network and their communications team as an assistant, stayed there for about a year. And then an opportunity came open at USA, where I had been in the Page program, where I continued to work for 5 years, worked my way up there, and then joined Showtime about 8 years ago, where I'm in my current role as Vice President Entertainment Publicity. And in that job, I am responsible for the publicity campaigns and communication rollouts for Showtime original series, including Billions, Z-Way, Jesus and Marrow, Flatbush Misdemeanors, and working on The Shy, can't forget The Shy, and working on upcoming launches for a new series called Yellow Jackets, Ripley, and Super Pumped. So really what that means is my job is to make sure people know about our shows. So our creative team makes these amazing shows, and my job is to make sure people know to watch them and when they're coming. So I handle all of the talent interviews for anytime any of our actors do interviews on a talk show or in a newspaper or a magazine that would come through all through our department. So that's in a nutshell a little bit about what I do. And I'm going to kick it over to Neil to introduce himself.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, I am also very excited to be here. I love speaking with young folks. I know you guys are continuing the legacy of all the work we're doing. So I'm at Nickelodeon. I'm a manager for animated current series, and I'll explain what that is a little bit later. I actually went to undergrad and I studied architecture. I've always been a visual creator. I've always been an artist. I've always just enjoyed design, things like that. But I grew up in a place where being an artist was not a viable future. And so I was encouraged to find a profession. And so for me, architecture was a space where I could draw and be a professional and make my parents happy. Lo and behold, I finished that program, but I did not love it. And so if we want to talk about pivots and meandering paths, I've always been an anime fan. And so rather than continue to become an architect, I just got my degree and I moved to Japan to teach English. And so I was a teacher for several years. Best decision of my life, because that's where I really solidified my love for animation. And because animation was everywhere, it finally hit me. I was like, this is the path I want to be on. This is what I want to do. So came back from Japan, tried to get into animation programs, and I moved to California, very excited to get into a program. And I was rejected from all 5 programs that I applied for. But, I dusted it off and re-strategized, and I figured out a way I went back to school and ended up getting an internship at Nickelodeon, which was the beginning of my career here. That was in 2009. The first day of my internship was Obama's first inauguration. So instead of being trained on my job, I sat and watched the inauguration with the rest of Nickelodeon that day. So I worked in production for, let's see, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I finished my internship. I left Nickelodeon, and actually my first job was as a PA on Family Guy, which was a great boot camp for animation, and learned all about the process, all the things that went into it. And I got to meet Seth MacFarlane, and he is a very fun person. From there, I actually went back to Nickelodeon. I kept in good touch with the internship cabinet coordinator, and she actually found a position for me on Fairly Odd Parents. And so worked on Fairly Odd Parents for a couple of years, moved to a couple other shows. I eventually was in social media at Nickelodeon. And then Viacom was doing layoffs, and I unfortunately was one of the people that was laid off, but it was another blessing in disguise in my career. I ended up jumping over to DreamWorks, and it was just another great experience to learn a different way of making animation. At the time, they had just started the deal with Netflix. And so everything was brand new. There was a lot of just new energy around animation, and coming off of Nickelodeon, a place where, we've been doing it for 20 plus years, it's really nice to see these things being done fresh. after a couple years of DreamWorks, I worked on Cleopatra in Space. Do watch it. I know it's not our IP, but definitely check it out. It's a great show. I finished on that show, and a friend of mine here at Nickelodeon, who's working in the executive space, invited me over. One reason she wanted me to come into the space was I had a background doing a lot of diversity and inclusion work in an extracurricular capacity. And now I'm in a space where I can actually apply that in my day-to-day career. And so what is it I do in current series animation? After a show goes through development process, it's been pitched, we decided we want to make it, it's been greenlit, it's going into production. That's where our job steps in. We kind of take over for development, and we make sure that all the shows stay on track. So we're the guys that say, hey, no, SpongeBob cannot run around with a chainsaw chasing kids, things like that. We're just keeping an eye on all the creative, making sure it's staying on track with what Nickelodeon's values are, and also giving a lot of creative notes, making sure things are working. So right now, 3 shows that I'm assigned to are the Casa Grandes, also Big Nate, which will be premiering in the fall, and the new Star Trek Prodigy is also premiering in the fall. And 3 very different shows, 3 very different experiences, but I'm always learning so much about this industry, and it's always changing. Okay, that's it for me. I don't know if I'm over my time, but I will go and kick it over to Sam.
Thank you, Neil. Appreciate that. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Dusenbury Jr. I'm a technical manager for CBS Sports. My journey, much like everyone else here on the panel, has a lot of twists and turns. So I came in wanting to be in sports media. I was born and raised here in the tri-state area of New York, Jamaica, Queens to be specific. So I'm a product of the New York City Public School of Education from kindergarten all the way through to getting my bachelor's at Hunter College. So post-grad, I was able to go and get my start into working for community newspapers. I was a writer, journalist, and a photographer. I was able to transition that into working as a paparazzi photographer for about 1.5 years. That was exciting. A lot of stories there. We can talk about those offline. But then I had kind of hit a bump in the road and I had to go get a regular job. So I did that for about 7 years. So that kind of took me off the grid for a little bit. But I was able to transition back into the industry, and that kind of started my journey to where I'm at today. So I've kind of bounced around from radio to television to the digital space to now where I'm in the television/remote broadcast space where I'm at now as a technical manager. And what I do as a technical manager is basically we go to all the events. We've done the Super Bowl, we've done March Madness, we've done multiple golf tournaments, including the PGA Championship, the Masters. And basically, we try to coordinate everything. We try to coordinate everything from the producer, director standpoint, their wants and needs, to the operations standpoint in terms of engineering and the cameraman and what they need. So we're kind of like a liaison between the two. We take everyone's wants and needs to try to figure out the best way to go about it. So in a short, brief, concise statement, that's kind of sort of the gist of what I do. There's a lot more layers to it and things like that that we could get into in the breakout rooms, but I'm very happy to be here, and I'm glad I was able to join not only this panel, but everyone that's tuning in.
All right, well, thank you so much for sharing your introductions, and now we'll move to our breakout sessions.
Danny Vasquez, you're up first.
Hi. So thank you both for taking the time this afternoon. My name is Danny Vasquez. I just graduated with my MBA from Fordham Gabelli in New York. Currently looking to shift into entertainment marketing. Prior to my MBA, I was doing publicity, working for a talent agency. So my question is if you have any tips or advice going through the application process for someone who is doing a little bit of a career shift. It's still kind of in the same communications area, but I want to kind of move away from agency life, go more in-house, and shift away from like PR to more like marketing and brand management. So would love to hear from you both any tips or advice that you've seen over your careers on any people that are kind of doing the same thing. Thank you.
I didn't know, Amanda, did you want to start or do you want me to start?
Go ahead. You can go first.
From my perspective, so I have worked in-house throughout all of my career. I've done in-house roles. And I actually think that you're in a better position transitioning from agency to in-house. I think people with agency experience usually like bring a fresher perspective. And at least from my position, I feel like that's always been seen as a positive thing. So at least that's a good start. And then I think some of the more like, I think any time that you can play up the commonalities and like the skill sets that are going to transition over, that's the thing that makes the most sense to me. And I think being able to demonstrate that perspective and the things that you'll be the most aware of in the role that you want, is something that I, at least when I was trying to kind of sell myself as like, I'm not the most traditional pick for this role, but I do have this like, I've been tracking this industry. I understand the ins and outs of this role. I think those are the things that really helped me in terms of trying to make that pitch, if that makes sense.
I agree with everything Tanya just said. I think, I also never worked on the agency side, but particularly in publicity, I think, agency life is a grind, as I'm sure you are well aware. But I think you develop a lot of skills in that, sort of forum that are really valued on the in-house side. So, applying what you learned on the agency side for an in-house job is really valuable. And then also just echoing what Tanya said about finding the similarities that, the skills that you learned in your PR positions that can transfer over into marketing. There's so many things. Like when I was a page at NBC and I was working at the Conan O'Brien show, I was in the talent department, which is very different from publicity, but the skills that I learned in working with the talent are something that I carry into my job still today. So there's just so many things that you can draw from different experiences that really just enrich your value in bringing into a new role. So I would just say, identify what you think those things might be, things that you learned during your publicity time that you think might transfer over. And I think having the understanding of the publicity side of things going into marketing is really valuable. There are so many similarities between the two. And, I work hand in hand with our marketing team every single day. So having someone on the marketing team who understands what I do on the publicity side is a dream, So I think that's, a really valuable thing. And also I would just say in terms of, applying for jobs, my advice would be, do what you can to find a person, do the networking. If there's a person that you can, rather than just applying online, which obviously you should do, but if you can search LinkedIn, see if you can reach out to a person that works on that team or in that, department. It's always, I think helpful to reach a human. So that's my advice.
Thank you both so much.
Good
Thanks.
luck.
All right, Millie Mansoray, you're up next.
Hi, you guys. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate hearing all your insight and taking, advice from two very seasoned professionals. So my question was a little similar to the question asked beforehand, but I guess because my, situation is unique to me, I just wanted to know, as someone, I graduated from NYU last year with a degree in digital journalism, and I currently freelance as a reporter, but I've been trying to pivot into entertainment media for the past year. Copywriting specifically is something that I'm interested in because I have, the background in writing and has a lot of creative elements to it. And I've been trying to hone in on my transferable skills because it's interesting that you guys mentioned, basically just highlighting the similarities, because I've been attempting to do that with no luck so far. And of course, me taking all these steps doesn't guarantee that I'll be chosen for the position. But would you say it's important for me to kind of try and focus on getting that hands-on experience that I don't really have? Or is it better to just see what else I can work with in terms of my transferable skills and, everything around what I can do within the skill set? If my question makes sense.
I think it does. I guess since you're talking about wanting to transfer into copywriting, I'm kind of just jumping in and answering. I think it depends a little bit on the type of copywriting you're interested in. And so something that I would really encourage is, make sure that your portfolio is really clear and strong and easy to parse. Like, make your clips as like concise and like, you know, easy to scroll through as possible. So that's one piece. And then I would also say, like, wherever you can, you know, even if there's writing that you haven't had a chance to do yet, if you can give examples of things that you've done that you are like, or give examples of types of writing that you'd like to do, and like kind of like, you know, like kind of almost like you're doing a copy test, but kind of set it up for yourself. So, you know, I would say, you know, even within like the portfolio that I've put together, I have examples of my corporate work, but then I also have examples of like my personal work that's like things that I've done where I've talked about pop culture. And actually the role that I got, the way that I met my current boss is by giving a very impromptu talk about Step Up to the Streets at a bar. So I really do encourage, you know, as much as, you know, yes, of course, like have your like super professional stuff put together, but also show your personality. If you're interested in pivoting into a particular kind of marketing copywriting, like set yourself a little copy test. Maybe if you know, this is not likely what you want to be doing, but like if you're interested in like being on a team that writes marketing emails, like pick some of your favorite brands and mock up marketing emails that you would put together. Like, how would you do that? And what would be your approach? Because that's the kind of thing that, you know, that shows, if you're applying somewhere, it shows them that you're already kind of thinking in that way. And those are the candidates that I think kind of float to the top, if that makes sense. Hopefully that's useful.
Great, perfect.
Thank you.
Rafael Reyes, let's hear from you now.
Hi, Amanda. Hi, Tanya. So my question isn't so much focused on media, but I'm a recent grad from Queens College. I'm studied media studies there. I'm currently in an internship, a really great company. But I'm not the most, I'm the worst networker. So it's, I hate, it's kind of how I was raised. So I have to unlearn some stuff about advertising myself and sort of pitching myself. And so what's your advice to help somebody get out there and network better at their job?
Well, I think you might be selling yourself a little bit short. The fact that you're on this Zoom is a great first step. But I think that, you know, it can be uncomfortable for sure, but you know, it's something that we all have to do. And so I would say for me, something that I find helpful is that the people that you're trying to network with are also trying to network. So we're all in the same boat. It's such you know, I still am working on networking where I'm at in my career. I will be 10 years from now too. It's just part of the business. And so I think just remind yourself that this is not, you know, you're not bugging anybody. This is not, you know, obviously there's a way to go about it. And, but I think that everybody's in the same boat. So just remind yourself that the people that you're trying to network with are also trying to network with others and with you. And so I think that for me, that's helpful in that, just to remind myself that we're all doing it.
I agree. And I would also, you know, leverage the fact that you're already, you know, working within a group of people and look at the people around you, and like, people like to talk about themselves, right? So if you see that somebody has a job title that you're fascinated by, like reaching out to them and saying like, hey, I'm currently at this role within the group. Like, I'm like curious about what you do. Do you have time to like sit down with me for 30 minutes and talk about it? Like that's an invitation that I would never turn down. And I can't think of anybody within my org that would ever say like, no, I won't do that with you. And that is, you know, that's going to give you all kinds of insight. And hopefully you're also going to be able to build a personal connection. And all you really have to do is just keep expressing curiosity about the ins and outs of their role, about their experience. Where did they come from? It's, you know, it's just this conversation, but on a one-to-one level. So thinking about it that way, I think can be useful too.
That's great. Great
Thank
advice.
you.
All right. Let's see. Fabiola Espinoza, please.
Oh, hi. Nice meeting you. I'm Fabiola. Well, I have a question kind of for both. I think the pitch program is really cool. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. I like writing. I think I like to do writing. But I'm still like is there such way or path, like kind of in the page program, to learn like my specific writing pathway to explore, perhaps do more workshops on writing, or did you have to take more one extra class or work in different aspects of that to get where you are now, to find your writing journey or a specific career path? If you can share any advice there, that would be really nice. Thank you.
Sure, I think it depends on the kind of writing you want to do. I do writing in my role as a publicist, but most of my writing is, press releases, which is a very specific type of writing. So for, in my experience, the best way to learn that is really in practice. It's not necessarily workshops or anything like that. It's really just practice and doing it. So I think that that's part of it, but it depends on if you want to do creative writing, if you want to write scripts, if you want to do more like what Tanya does with copywriting. It really depends on the specific type of writing you want to do. And maybe, do you know are you still trying to figure it out?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out.
Which is okay too. I would say my advice is, if you enjoy writing, just write and try to figure out what kind of writing you like, and read everything. Read press releases, read copy, read scripts, any scripts you can get your hands on, and see what strikes your fancy, like what really interests you the most, and then figure out from there, once you hone in on, okay, you think I want to do, I want to be a screenwriter, I want to write scripts, then you can figure out the best path forward. But that's my advice. Tanya, I'm sure you have a different perspective.
I have a similar perspective. And I would just say another thing to consider, and this, I think I developed this more as I started working at ViacomCBS in my current role, is just realizing, like Nora Ephron says, like everything is copy. So everywhere you go, every billboard you see, even just like online, like every banner ad, someone had to craft that. Someone had to come up with someone wrote a version of that and then was told to make it shorter. Like there are just infinity versions of writing as a career. And so I think as you're trying to feel out what type of writing you're interested in, it's helpful to think about it that way, and to just be, to stay interested and stay curious about, what are different brands doing to express themselves, and like what are the different like deliverables that any given brand has to put out into the world to make something happen. And that could be a television show, or that could be an energy bar. Like there's so many different things that need to be written to express a brand in the world, that I think, you have a lot of options. And it took me a while to kind of develop that eye to just look at everything that way. But once you start thinking of it that way, I think it gets easier to see like, oh, this is the kind of thing I could get really passionate about writing. And so I would recommend just trying to try those glasses on, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so let's start off with Mandy.
Hi. So I have a question for Neil. So I know you said you've done like a lot of different jobs. What in particular was your favorite job, and why?
That's really good. Honestly, my favorite job was working at a bookstore. I used to work at Borders Bookstore in Hollywood, and I just love being around books. I love all the ideas I was constantly coming in contact with. It tends to draw a really interesting crowd. And so I just love that I was always talking and always like discussing various topics throughout the day. How does that connect to what I do now? It's a similar kind of thing. Every time I'm on a show or get a new script, there's these new ideas I'm having to consider and making sure the story is working. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, the bookstore was actually my favorite.
All right, so I see next we'll have a question from Megan.
Hello. Question for either of you. My question is, I have 2 more semesters left of college, and I was wondering what I could do now to kind of prepare to go into the industry, just mentally not being a student anymore and kind of being in the industry in that way, but also what I can do for my skills to kind of grow in the field.
Do you know what you want to do?
television, but I'm still kind of figuring that out. That's kind of my main goal for the year, is to figure out what exactly I want to do.
Internship. Get in the door any way you can and just be a sponge. That's something that every job I've had, whether it was in the industry or not, I try to look at what everyone's doing. I'm not just only concerned about what my position is. I want to learn what everybody's doing, because you never know when you might be needed. Someone shows up, they have to go home early, or somebody doesn't show up at all, or whatever, they're short a person. You might be able to say, hey, well, look, I've kind of watched a little bit of what that person could do. I might be able to at least step in and hold the fort down. So from my point of view, it's always about getting in the door by any means, and then just watching. Osmosis is one of my big things. I watch what everybody does. I want to know what everyone's title is and what their responsibilities are, and try to see if I can try to put my skill set into that framework. And if not, then maybe learn or train on the side. So from my point of view, I would say just internship, fellowship, grant, whatever you got to do, just get in the door.
And I will co-sign everything Sam just said. Like, there's a lot of competition, obviously. But also, networking is key. Something that was told to me when I first moved to LA was like, you never know who your next opportunity was going to be. And that was when I was working at the bookstore and still trying to figure out how to get into animation. And once you just start talking about what you want to do, someone, I'll never forget, there's one girl, she's like, oh my gosh, I work at Sony Animation. We have a page program very similar to what Amanda talked about. So we have a page program I can get you in. And so talk to as many people that are in the space that you can possibly do. And, we didn't have LinkedIn when I was doing this. LinkedIn is such a great resource. You can really literally go to this TV show that you like and look up who is doing what positions and shoot them a message. And they may or may not get back to you, but I guarantee, just keep doing that. Talk to people as many ways as you can. Talk to people on Twitter. On Twitter, we're all trying to talk anyway. Talk to people, hit them up on Instagram. Any way you can, start talking to people who are doing things that you want to be doing. Yeah, and then networking. I know a lot of us, something I run into a lot is people like, oh, well, I'm an introvert. It's hard for me to talk to people. Networking is just, it's not this big, scary thing. It's making friends. It's asking people for coffee. It's taking people to coffee. I mean, who doesn't want a free coffee and 15 minutes to talk about themselves, right? So networking, and then internships. I think internships are going to be the number one way into an industry. You'll be in a space where not only are you doing the work, but you're also going to be surrounded by people who are excited to talk to you. Again, it's Hollywood. We all want to talk about ourselves. So just start talking to people and ask us.
Great, thank you.
All right, let's go to Andrew for a question.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. So my question is to both of you. Earlier, you mentioned that, you faced some layoffs and some some negative things in your career. What were some ways that, or some coping mechanisms that you both used during your career to keep you motivated, to keep you positive, knowing how sometimes when you're starting your career in this industry, it can be hard, to keep going. What were some ways to keep you motivated, to keep you positive, to keep you going?
Ooh. I'll go ahead and jump in, and Sam, feel free to.
Yeah, go ahead.
For me, it took a couple things. When I started out, it was always remembering why I got into this in the first place. And a friend of mine, when I got rejected from those 5 schools that I thought I was going to get into, a friend of mine was like, look, okay, so here are 5 doors that just closed on you. So go find the 6th door, there's a million ways to get into animation. And I was able to find that, it wasn't just me getting into these programs. And in hindsight, I'd honestly say I probably found the easier, definitely cheaper way into it, right? I was trying to get into like Cal Arts and Art Center and these schools that are $50,000 a year or more. And I ended up getting an internship when I was going to a community college. And so, there's always a million ways to get into. There's always another way into the industry, especially with entertainment. There's a million ways in, and then also so the layoff. I won't lie, that was a big hit for me, and I didn't realize how much I had tied my identity to my career. And so, and I was at this place I loved, is at Nickelodeon. It's Nickelodeon, it's great, I love it. I started here, everyone loves me. And then I get this notice that I'm no longer a part of Nickelodeon. So that was really hard. But part of the process on the far end of that, what I came out with was realizing that, okay, this really isn't about Nickelodeon. This is about me. And why am I here? I'm here because I want to create great stories for kids. So how else do I do that? You go find another place to make great stories for kids. So just being very clear on what your goal is and what you're trying to accomplish, and always coming back to that. Remind yourself of what you do love, not only about what you're doing, but of who you are in that space. And that's been how I always kind of mentally keep track of, like, okay, if I have a bad day at work, I know that at the end of the day, what I did today is going to make a kid laugh. And that's why I showed up here in the first place.
Yeah, I co-sign a lot of what Neil just said. And I think for me and my journey, like, I had to stop, like hard stop what I was doing in my career, and to pivot, to go from running around Manhattan, going to private parties and to secret clubs and having fun, taking photos and pictures and stuff like that, to just going, doing a 9 to 5 and just doing that year after year after year. That was a hell of a transition, and it was like a reality check, but it had to help out at home. So for me, I had to make sure, how do I keep my side projects or my interests, my hobbies still going? So for me, I was hustling. So I would be able to hustle for photography, be able to still do photo shoots every now and then on weekends. I would still meet up with my friends who were photographers or writers or journalists or whatever, just to kind of keep myself in that small community somehow, some way. Even though I wasn't firmly entrenched in it anymore, I still kind of had my ear to the street a little bit, and I still was able to kind of keep up with what's going on. So that job that I didn't like kind of birthed the path for me to get back into the industry. So it kind of all came full circle. If I wasn't at that, what I thought was a dead end job, I might not have met the person that took me on a tour of this trade school that kind of got me back into the industry. So, for me, it was always keeping the goal was still there. Even though I was out the game, my head was still in the game. So I would say, no matter what you do, no matter what trials and tribulations you go through, you still have to keep your eyes on what you ultimately want to do. We all have pitfalls in the road. We all have to, we all have peaks and valleys. Life is peaks and valleys, right? So for me, it was just more of like, even though I'm in the valley, I know I'm going to get to that peak. So let me stay focused, even if it's on the side, even if it's not full time. Let me keep that focus going, because I know when that peak hit, I got to be ready. So that's what I would say. No matter what you're going through, as long as you know that peak is coming, you got to stay focused.
Yeah.
Great. Let's take a question from Ashley.
Hello. I am a recent graduate, and because of COVID-19, I was unable to get my internship that I was supposed to get. So what would you suggest? And also, I saw someone in the chat also had that question.
What do you want to do?
I take an interest in writing and directing, but I also am proficient in editing.
You have one of these, right? You have a phone, right? Everything
Yes,
is
sir.
here. Everything is there. You can, that's the one thing for you all that I think is so great, is that you can literally take the power in your own hands. You're carrying that power. You're carrying a whole editing device, recording device, content creating device. It's in your pocket 24 hours a day. I'm sure you have social media, you've done stuff online. You're already doing a lot of these jobs already. You're already directing, you're already video producing, you're already video editing, audio editing, you're already doing that stuff, cinematography. You're doing it already, it's in your phone. So even though, you might not be able to get an internship, or you weren't able to get an internship, I think if you just keep working with what you have, like we all have to make do what we have. We all don't have top of the line equipment. We all don't have access to that type of things all the time. So we make do with what we have. I think you'll be able to get, maybe not an internship, you might be able to get a job straight out the gate with what you have in your phone, like what you're able to do and create on your phone. So obviously keep looking for internships. And I think people understand, because of COVID, a lot of graduates, got kind of just left out there in the wind. So I think they're going to be very cognizant of doubling back and trying to help them out. But also, you have it already. It's there. Like, there's so much power in this little thing. There's full-length feature films that are shot on this that are getting millions. So, I mean, it's right here. As long as you're already doing that, keep that going and keep searching, and you'll definitely come across something, if not on an internship level, but probably even higher.
Again, because it's
me and you here, Neil.
Yeah, right. And so what I'll say, kind of continue what Sam said, look for those opportunities that may not be the formal ones, right? So, you know, find those student films that are being shot and get in and get a role on that film. You know, if someone needs an editor, you know, I'm not, you know, you should definitely be paid for your skills. And that's something I'd like to say. But, you know, every once in a while, you know, you might want to, hey, I will volunteer this many hours to edit your film. I'll volunteer this much time. Get in there and start doing the work. So you start building a body of work. And just, you know, and like Sam said, be in the space with the creators who are doing the things you want to do. I assumed you're in New York, we're not sure, but if you're in New York, people are shooting stuff. When I visit New York, I see people shooting everywhere I look. And so start just doing the work. You know, if there's a writers guild or writing organizations, start volunteering for these organizations so you are around these people. And then, because they're going to start asking you, well, what do you want to do? And you're like, oh, you know, I'm a writer. They're going to ask you for a script. And then that snowballs. So that's something, just be around the people who are doing these things. Also, for this internship you got, you know, anyone that you emailed with, anyone you talked to about this internship, they are now a resource for you. So, you know, reach out and say, hey, the internship didn't work out, but do you have other suggestions? Is there another opportunity? Is there something else I can do with your organization to supplement what should have been my internship? You know, again, I keep going back to networking. Anyone who emails you at that point, you know, always read the room, but even if it's someone's assistant, hit them back up and be like, hey, we talked last summer, things didn't work out. I'm looking for other opportunities. What can you recommend? 9 times out of 10, people will have a direction to point you in. So, you know, just keep the rhythm, oh gosh, I'm not using words right now. You're already in the pathway. You're already in the flow. So there's already people who know your name. So take advantage of that, capitalize on that, and, you know, keep moving in the direction you want to go. Yeah.
All right, we have about 2 minutes left. We're going to go to Nicole for a question.
Hey guys. So first of all, I just wanted to say to Samuel, when you said you were from Jamaica, that was really exciting. I went to St. John's.
Okay,
so
yeah, here
Jamaica represent.
okay.
Yeah. And I worked with CBS Sports in filming one of the basketball games, a few of the basketball games. So that's just a cool connection.
Okay, cool.
But I'm just wondering, I graduated last year. I've been struggling to find a position in the industry. This summer, I committed to a nanny position, but I'm nannying for an executive producer on a Showtime show. So I'm just wondering if you have any advice on how to kind of translate that into her being able to be a resource for me, because I don't know how to cross that bridge really, or what to ask her. So,
I mean, I think for me, the main thing I have always leaned upon is you have to be willing to just be blunt. That's worked for me. I tried to tap dance early in my career and kind of sort of befriend people. And sometimes you just kind of have to tell people what you want, because not everyone can just read your mind or pick up on your vibe. Some people might just think you're just kind of hanging around just to hang around, or you're just reaching out just to reach out, just to, you know, I have a lot of people that reach out to me on LinkedIn where they just see the places where I've worked. So they just want to be connected, but they're not really trying to connect to me. They just want to be able to say, hey, I know so-and-so who works at CBS. He doesn't really know me, but he gets to just be able to say that. So I think if you really want to make this connection and see what it can do or what it can do for you, I would take the direct approach. I think sometimes I'd rather get and this is not a negative or towards your situation, I'd rather get the no sooner than later. So let me know, can you help me? You know, I'd rather know that now than kind of being wishy-washy about it, and 6 months in, I still don't know where I stand, and now all that time has gone by. So for me, I'm always more the direct approach. Give me the quick yes or the quick no now, so I know how to pivot and move on to whoever else I need to reach out to.
So we'll start off with Marcus.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marcus Matthews. I'm not sure if they are in the room because I can't see them. But my question in general is actually for both Tanya and then one additional one for Amanda. I am a communications PR major that just recently graduated. And I kind of just wanted to know how essentially that shift, because in my undergrad, I was getting a lot of just social media PR things that had nothing to do with the entertainment industry. So I would like to know essentially, where did you find these experiences? How did you set yourself apart from other people, because they are very limited in our realm? How did you set yourself apart from other applicants? And then Amanda, I really wanted to get into the PAGE program and kind of learn a little bit more about that. As someone who has recently graduated, I don't have the opportunity to intern because student loans. So I'm just interested in learning a little bit more about the PAGE program. But of course, if you can't answer that, I can always use Google. It's free. So yeah.
I'm happy to start, and then I'll let Amanda speak to the PAGE program. I think what you're and first of all, congratulations on graduating. That's wonderful. And then what I was going to say is, if you're naming kind of communications and social media experience in particular, the great news about that is that, that's something that every brand has, right? So just because you were doing it with a very particular lens does not necessarily mean that that won't be applicable. And I would say, if you're looking at something where you wanted to put yourself forward as a candidate for a job that was way more, like social media, like let's say like a social media coordinator or something like that. I think it's really about presenting a portfolio of times when you've crafted posts that really drove engagement, or put together different kind of content campaigns, things like that, that show that your thinking is there and that your awareness of like the ways that the platform functions are on point. And that is completely transferable. And there's no reason that you wouldn't be a strongly considered candidate if that's the kind of work that you're being able to put forward. So really it's proving that you understand, the skill sets that you can take into the new role, that are really going to serve wherever you're headed. Hopefully that's useful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So much.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good, Amanda. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just going to jump in with a little bit more about the PAGE program. So the PAGE program is a program for recent graduates. So it is it's like a full-time job. I was a PAGE many, many moons ago. So I think it's different now than it was when I was a PAGE, but it's a really great way to sort of explore different facets of the entertainment industry. You can try lots of different things. I graduated knowing that I liked communications. I didn't really know what that meant. Did I want to do corporate communications? Did I want to do publicity? Did I want to work, internal communications in an HR, capacity, something like that? And I did a couple of internships in college. I did one in corporate, did one in news, and definitely figured out that news wasn't for me, but I hadn't figured out my niche yet. So the PAGE program sort of let me explore. And I, sort of, as I mentioned at the beginning, I fell into an entertainment publicity rotation and was able to, sort of try it on. You do rotations again, back in my day, they were 12 weeks. So you really got to really try that role on and see if it fit. So I definitely recommend it. I would look it up, explore it a little bit more to anybody who's interested in it. It's I should mention, I believe that CBS also has a PAGE program. So definitely look up that one too. But it's, there's definitely different different sort of entry level training programs out there, I would explore them a little further. There's one in LA, there's one in New York, there's the CBS pages. So there's some really great opportunities out there.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. You ladies are phenomenal. I love it. Thank you.
Great. Let's go to Daisy next.
Hi, my name is Daisy. I'm currently a graduate student in media management at Fordham University. I have a question both for Tanya and Amanda, is that I'm sure you all have the experience of managing an intern. And my question is, how do you find an intern have the potential to work as a good employee that you want to work with in the future? I think that's what I'm looking for usually when I'm doing intern with the organization. I want to, in other words, what kind of qualities that you value the most when it comes to a teamwork on intern?
I'll start just because I'm currently managing an intern. So this is very relevant to me. And I will say something that I think there's of course all the work that you put in during your internship, being super engaged, asking really great questions. I think with my most recent interns that I've worked with, you know, when they have wider ranging questions about the business, or they ask a question about like the way that this project is going to be applied and like what the other like sort of the implications of a project are, like those kinds of insights show me that like they're thinking on a level that's like beyond just that day-to-day grind, which is always really exciting to see, right? The biggest piece of advice I have, if you're ever in an internship role, is actually for what you do after the internship role. I've probably worked with, I would say, at least a dozen interns in different roles in my career. I've had one intern stay in touch with me, and I've had great relationships with every intern. Like I've always found them to be personally very interesting, really lovely to talk to, so enjoyable to work with, would be so happy to provide a recommendation or just talk about like, hey, this job posting just came up. Do you think I'd be a good fit for it? I'd be more than happy to go over that stuff. But I think people feel like, oh, I finished my internship. I was not offered a job on the spot. And sometimes, you know, no matter how much you think an intern is incredible, you might not have an opening, but that doesn't mean that 6 months from now, a year from now, you might have friends who are hiring something, you might have some other thing. And if you have somebody who like every few months is just like, hey, I read this article, it was really cool, just like letting you know what I'm up to these days. Like that's a person that you can then offer something to, and you can actually like be of use to them, because that's what we all want. We all want to be like useful and helpful and like provide that next step in your career. And it doesn't feel great when you have to kind of do the goodbye party and be like, we don't have a job right now, but that doesn't mean that we won't later. And it doesn't mean that we won't do what we can to connect you. So stay in touch. I think every person hears that when they leave an internship, and very, very rarely do people actually do it. And it always feels uncomfortable. It's always going to feel like you're bothering people. I swear you're really, really not. So just like try to like, if you, like the biggest thing I would say is just like, don't take that self-consciousness with you as you exit your internship. Like just think of it as another person that you are now connected with and that wants to hear from you.
I agree with everything Tanya just said. I think for me, when I'm, you know, interviewing interns, I really look for like a positive can-do attitude is something that is like one of the first things I notice. If people are like really excited to jump in and learn, and curiosity is a big one as well. Like someone who really wants to understand the ins and the outs of our business and our department and how it works. Comes with good questions. That I think is really important. And I would just echo what Tanya said again about building those relationships and staying in touch. You know, that is something that I learned. One of my intern bosses helped me get into the PAGE program. One of my the bosses that I worked with in the PAGE program is still my mentor to this day. So building those relationships early in your career, I think are super important, and taking the initiative to, you know, we all are very guilty of getting busy and are not, the best at being able to check in. So if you're able to take the initiative and just check in with, your intern managers. And again, as Tanya was saying, like, saw this article, like, I know you're working on Z-Wave, made me think of you kind of thing. That is something that I really appreciate. So that's something I recommend, that, keep interest. If you were interested in the internship, once you leave, keep on top of it. Like, keep checking in. Sometimes for our interns, they'll do stuff like that. Like, they will have been, working with me as I'm gearing up for the launch of a show, and maybe aren't still there when the show premieres, but they'll, check in and say, oh, I saw, Paul Giamatti on Fallon. He was so good. Like, can't wait to watch Billions. Like, that kind of stuff always just really resonates with me. So that would be my advice. Just keep tabs on the interns, the companies that you intern for and the people that you intern for.
Thank you. That's super helpful.
Sure.
And we have time for a few more questions. So Alexis, we're going to go to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Alexis Flores. I just graduated in 2020 from Cal State Fullerton with a communications PR degree. And I guess my question is going to be a little bit more on the personal side, because you guys did mention how interns don't keep those like great relationships after the actual internship. Have you guys ever seen a intern or yourself experience some imposter syndrome? And what are different ways that you have come over it or seen someone else overcome their imposter syndrome?
The short answer is yes. And I think there, especially early on in my career, I as I mentioned, I started as I actually started as an intern editing customer reviews for a retail website, and then the PR department of that website like happened to be hiring, and I was wearing an interesting outfit, and so they asked me to interview. So I really felt like an imposter from the interview all the way through, because, and then I was working alongside someone who was a communications major and had kind of all of this experience about building outreach lists and all of this stuff. And I just felt like I was so out of my element. I think, I don't necessarily think that like fake it till you make it feels a little bit like toxic positivity. I think something that is more actionable is really acting on your curiosity and trying to learn as much as you can. And so, anytime if you're in a meeting and you're overwhelmed by how many terms are flying around that you've never heard before, I think it's time to just start writing them down. And if you don't feel comfortable asking people that you're working with what those things mean, then, start Googling and try to figure it out from there. I think the best thing to do is look for those people that you have any kind of personal connection within your workspace and ask them those questions. I always try to be that person for people who start with our organization, because we operate with so many ridiculous acronyms, and they're all very easily explained, but there's no glossary, right? So it's things like that. Instead of, I think you can always feel that immediate kind of flush of overwhelm if there's something you don't understand. And then to me, that's where imposter syndrome really gets started, is oh, wow, I don't understand this. I'm not supposed to be here. But if you can really take that and say, okay, I have some learning to do, I'm going to leverage this and actually get curious about this thing that I currently don't understand, you end up getting to a place where you really do get it. And also when you feel safe in a situation, just ask, because I've been in giant company meetings where somebody keeps saying a term over and over again. And I've been the person who says, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. And so many people in the room are I also had no idea, but I just wanted to look like I knew what was going on. So those are kind of my big pieces of advice on that.
I agree wholeheartedly with everything Tanya just said. I think we've all experienced imposter syndrome, from interns to, people that have worked there for years. It's something that I think if somebody tells you they've never felt that way, they're probably lying to you. But, I think Tanya gave great advice, and just ask the questions, find someone that you feel safe with that can be a sounding board, and ask the questions. And the more you know, the less you'll feel that way. And the only way to really learn is to just keep tabs on, what you don't know, and listen and absorb it all and ask the questions, and, hopefully that will help, get over the hurdles.
Thank you so much, Tanya and Amanda. I really appreciate you both.
No problem.
And we have time for one more really quick question. We're going to go to Nazim.
Hi, I just had one question. People like for me, like I'm a junior right now, and I'm also like looking for internships and stuff. But it's also scary because a lot of the times they look for experiences, and it's very difficult how can I get experience if I don't even work there? And it's difficult for me because it's like I want to also learn while I'm working. So do you have any advice for people like me who also wants to learn while they're working? Because internships are about learning, but I know a lot of companies, they look for experiences. So
I would say it doesn't have to be like, when we're looking for interns, the whole point of an internship is to learn. You have to get your first internship at some point, right? So when you're setting out, my advice would be to look on campus. Are there organizations where you can volunteer, get experience that way, or join a club and, be the president of, if you want to do publicity, is there a writing club? Is there, something like that, and get experience in other ways that doesn't have to necessarily be work experience or internship experience. And I would just say, in terms of learning while working, I think every day is an opportunity to learn something in any position or, work situation. So even if it's not, the most glamorous job or the one that you want, take those skills that you're learning and be able to think about how you can apply them to what you want to do. Because I think there's an opportunity to learn in any situation.
Thank you.
And Mary King, you are up next.
Hi guys, thank you again so much for being here and for doing this. My question's for Neil, fellow, I actually lived abroad in Japan for 3 years, working as a civilian doing marketing and publicity. And so I thought that was really cool that you got to be out there and experience everything that there is. Maybe we can talk about that another time. But I did have a question about, you talked about pivoting a bit, if going from like, you knew architecture was not architecture, but animation, and like being creative was something that you wanted to do. And for me, I've been working in marketing and publicity with like a heavy emphasis on copywriting as well as content production. But what I really want to do is, I still want to stay in the production realm, but I want it to be for producing TV is like my ultimate goal and like developing. So what would be your advice on, I guess, first steps to doing that? Because like right now I've been in leadership roles, but because I haven't worked in TV production, I feel like I might have to like take a step back, which I'm totally fine with. I'm like very passionate about this. I just want to know, like, I guess the steps to take.
Yeah, I mean, it can take some time, but I would look at like the TV Academy. They have a lot of programs that are just in very different realms. There's a Producers Guild of America also. They have fellowship programs and other kind of like outreach programs that are designed for people who are new to the industry. And so I would definitely look into those. For me, and also, one thing I will say is like, I was definitely older when I got into the industry. When I did my internship, I was 30 years old. And so I'd already had a little bit of a career. I'd already had some experience. And so it can be disheartening. It's a little hard because people are looking at, college.
People coming right out of college. Yeah.
Right. But I do say that don't think of it as a limitation. Just once I got into it, a lot of people were saying how it was actually to my benefit that I had this, almost 10 years of life experience behind me coming into it. But looking at, the producers programs, I know UCLA has an actual TV production program that even if you're not going to take that on full time, you can take some of the classes and you'll just be around people who are in the industry and people doing the work. And again, I may have said this in the other room, you never know who your next opportunity is going to be, right? So, you might be sitting in class next to someone and they're the assistant to the head of a department at HBO, or they're the son of somebody who worked in who's a connection for you. So the key is just kind of being around people who are in that space and being vocal about what your goal is. Sam said this in the last meeting, just being very vocal, being that squeaky wheel that gets the oil, and it does come through. You will be the one that comes to mind if you're loud enough and speak to enough people. You're the one that comes to mind when they're saying, "Hey, we're looking for a new assistant in our XYZ department." "Oh, what's that wonderful person I met, on this Zoom a couple weeks ago?" So just kind of looking at those programs and outreach stuff, those are a great way to kind of get just into the space where you'll be noticed and you can make that move.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That helps a lot.
Yeah. All right. Matane.
Great. Thanks so much. Maya Henderson, you're up next.
Thank you so much for your time today. And my name is Maya Henderson. I recently graduated from Manhattanville College. It's located in Purchase, New York, with a bachelor's degree in digital media production. And so I'm an aspiring creative. And so what stands out to you as the most, or what are your key elements you look for in animated project pitches?
In a pitch, what I like to, so I actually am pitching right now on a project I'm working on and learning a lot in the process. I would say if you're pitching an animated series, you want to keep the pitch to about 20 minutes. And the way I like to approach it, think of it as you're telling a story. And so a lot of people come in and like, I have 1 million characters and here's a story, this, and that. And at the end, I'm like, okay, but what is this about? So you want to be, what I like to say is you want to have a very clear idea of your protagonist, a clear idea of the conflict that they're facing, a clear idea who their, antagonist is. Just clarity is kind of what it comes down to, being very clear about what your character's overcoming. This get very long. I will say this: the 4 things I look for in a script, and I think are important to any story, is who is your hero, what is their goal, what is the obstacle, and what do they learn. So I would approach any pitch from that point of view. And that can start to reach out into all kinds of things. If you're pitching SpongeBob, for example, what is SpongeBob's obstacle? It changes, obviously, but SpongeBob just wants everyone to have a good time. That's SpongeBob's goal. And so you want to come in and kind of present that, make sure that's clear, and but also make sure there's enough to support the idea that this could be a series, right? So that knowing that their goal, as they move towards that goal, that we're going to have 26 different episodes where that goal is facing a challenge, and that you can support a season out of that. I could go on and on about it, but those are kind of the 4 points I'd like to stick with when I come into like any kind of story pitch. I hope that's helpful.
It is very much. Thank you very much.
That's great. Morgan Spearman, can we hear from you?
Sorry about that. That's my sister's name, but my name is Miles. My bad.
Hi, Miles.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm a third year studying marketing and music with a minor in media production at the University of Cincinnati. Currently, I'm NBC Universal international marketing and publicity intern. And so it's kind of a question for Neil, but Sam, feel free to also answer, talk about your journey. But I just noticed that, Neil, you were like an intern or a Nick turn, I guess you would call it. And then you kind of you did some other experiences, but you ended up still being a full-time at, Nickelodeon. And so I'm an intern now, and I'm trying to obviously in the most way possible, try to get that return offer. So do you mind sharing that, what you did as an intern that you think really said, yeah, they remember me. If I needed a full-time role with Nickelodeon, the future, I could probably do it.
Yeah. So the first thing I say is talk to everybody. And you're an intern. Everyone wants to talk to you. Everyone's excited. Talk to as many people as you can in as many spaces as you possibly can. Definitely focus on, people who are doing what you want to do, but having those informationals, having those little coffee talks, they make all the difference. When there's opportunities to, at Nickelodeon, I know for sure. And actually, when I was at DreamWorks, I know that NBC does a similar thing. When there's events to say, hey, we're having an executive gala, and sometimes they'll ask the interns to come and work gala. Show up there and talk about what you're doing. Talk to the execs there. Talk to everyone. Make sure everybody, as many people as possible, know your face and know what you want to do. So just a quick story. When I was, I interned at Nick. I started my job at Fox. When I was at Fox, the call that I got from my old internship head, she called, she said, hey, your name came up in a meeting and we want you to come in for an interview. To this day, I have no idea who said my name or what meeting that was, but that is how my career, my time at Nickelodeon started. So getting out there and letting as many people know who you are as possible is key. Networking. Sam's heard me say it a million times. Networking is so important and it pays off. Sam, I'd love to hear if you have anything to add to that in terms of like networking and making yourself known out in the industry.
For sure. Look, I'm here. I got into CBS Sports because my intern hooked me up. So my intern, when I was working in radio at WFAN, she left and then began a career in television production. And when I moved on to SiriusXM as a producer, things were kind of stagnant. So me and her stayed in contact every once in a while, again, keeping that networking option open. And she said, hey, look, there's something open over here. Would you be interested in leaving radio and transitioning into television? Now imagine if I would have been an a-hole to her back in the day as my intern, if I had treated her badly or didn't care nothing for her, I would probably still be languishing in a job that I was already over. So to Neil's point, networking is so important, keeping those lines of communication open, establishing those relationships and being genuine with it. I think that's something that, for me, when someone's just trying to befriend you because they think you can hook them up. And there's a clear line of difference between someone who genuinely wants to know what you do and is trying to figure out if that's what they want to do, besides someone just saying, hey, look, maybe if I get his email, then I could bombard him after my internship is over and badger him into hopefully getting me a meeting. So I think to know what you're really trying to go for, befriending who you can in a genuine way, and keeping those lines of communication open, as Neil has been saying, I think those are the number one priorities. All those things are the number one priorities when you're interning.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
For sure.
Fabulous. For those of you who have your hands raised, could I see a show of real hands, not digital hands, if you have a question for Sam or for both? Because I just want to make sure we get Sam specific questions in. Marcus, I saw you first. Marcus Griffith.
Hi. Sam. So my question is actually for Sam. All right. So first of all, I want to say is I'm also from Jamaica, Queens as well.
Let's go.
Yeah. And another thing I want to say is that so sports media is something I'm interested in doing as well. I kind of figured that a few years after I graduated from college, even though I like wanted to media in general. So basically I just want to tell us, how did you get in? Well, obviously I know how you got in, but also I say, like, how did you, make the transition or find like stuff for you to like get you into the door, that way? Like, how did you find those things?
Well, I think for me, everything started as a child, right? So everything with me growing up, I had no real interest in, the books that they gave us at school. I didn't really care for those. I learned how to read proficiently because of my uncle's old Sports Illustrated magazines. That's what kind of got me into reading. And then this flower bloomed and then I just started reading everything. So that bug was put in me early. So I was always constantly trying to figure out, well, what do I want to do? So I tried everything. I tried writing, I tried blogging. I tried doing sports photography. I did podcasting. I was a radio host. I was an analyst, like in television and radio. I was a producer. I've directed. I've tried everything and then kind of figured out, all right, well, what lane do I want to go in? And that's why, I said in the other room, but I'll say it here is whatever job I get, I'm looking at everybody else's job. I want to know what everybody does. I want to be a sponge. I learned through osmosis as well as being trained, right? So I was able to figure out I just know I want to stay in sports and I want to be creative in sports. So how can I do that? How can I stay involved in doing that? So that's why I did paparazzi stuff. I lived at the NBA store. All the types of basketball players would come through. I would be there with my old, it was an old film camera. It wasn't even digital. And I'm just there trying to get photos of these guys to show that I'm trying to be active. I'm trying to leverage this into something. And then my relationship with the person who ran the NBA store garnered me opportunities getting into private parties and working red carpet events and stuff like that. So it's more of, you have to put yourself out there. I think that that's one of the main things I would say is we all want to do stuff. We all have dreams. We all have imaginations of what we would like to do, but you kind of have to just get out there and just start doing it. Even if it's bootleg in the beginning, even if it's trash in the beginning, I think you just have to get out there and just start doing it. And the path will kind of create itself from the work that you're putting out there.
Okay, thank you, definitely.
Great, thank you so much. Unfortunately, this is going to have to be our last question before we regroup in the main room. And Ruth, sure, let's hear from you.
Hi, thank you both for being here. My question is for Samuel, because I know you said you had to step out of like the entertainment industry and transition back in. I currently work as an associate producer, but like in the private sector, which is a very different experience from in the entertainment industry. And I find that as I'm trying to transition back, I'm being told that I am overqualified for a lot of the entry-level jobs, but that I don't have enough industry experience for jobs at my current level. Do you have any suggestions on like how to really re-strategize as I attempt to move forward?
Is there anyone that was in the industry before that's still in it, that you still have connects with?
There are that I have, for the most part, maintained connections with them, but they also are in a different part of the industry. That was more like the commercial side, and I'm trying to transition into film and TV.
Okay, well, I did this, so Neil, please, like it's the first time. We all have this, right? We all have these phones, and with these phones, we're all directors, we're all video producers, video editors, and audio engineers and all this type of stuff, right? So I think you're gonna have to do your own content, or something that Neil brought up, I think was very smart, volunteer on projects going on in your local area. I think you have to put yourself out there. You have to do the work to show that you can do the work, right? It's kind of an oxymoron. I need ID to get ID, but it's like, for this, you're gonna have to show that you can AP, so you can AP. So I think you're going to have to show and prove that you're more than qualified to do that work, and you can show a working knowledge of doing that work, and that will get you that work. It's kind of, because we got out and you have to get back in, they make you work twice as hard to get back in. But I think if you do it that way, where you take the charge and show, I can do this, have a reel, develop some content, get some friends, family, whatever, shoot some stuff, edit it down, AP it like you would if you was hired by CBS or somewhere else in Viacom, and show that you can do that work. I think having a reel will be a way to get you back into the door.
Okay, like the reel that's in the field that I'm going into. So no more private stuff.
No.
Thank you.
No worries.
Piggyback on that just real quick too, is like, look for those organizations like Sam, and like, Sam is obviously, he knows what he's talking about. Look for those TV organizations, look for the support organizations, look for the TV Writers Guilds, or the even Facebook groups and meetups of people who are screenwriters or film writers who are doing that. Get in that space and get around the people who are those professionals again. And again, you're kind of in that pipeline, you'll be doing the work. Just get around, be in the space that be in the air that people are breathing, so that you can be that one that comes to mind when that opportunity opens up.
Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you both. Thank you to all of our students. So we have the gang back together now. Everyone's back in the main room. So I just want to say welcome back. And just before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask, a couple final questions for our panel, some parting words, if you will. As Kate mentioned at the beginning of the event, this is ViacomCBS's Virtual Community Day, which enables employees to take the time to volunteer and give back to the community. And that's certainly a great program. So along those lines, I was just wondering, what's one thing that you really love about either working for ViacomCBS or even just the favorite part about your jobs? So maybe Tanya, if we could start with you on that.
Sure. And I just want to say everyone's had such excellent questions and it's been a real pleasure. So I would say the thing that I enjoy most about my work now is getting to work on a creative team and really getting to, so I often partner with graphic designers or, our video team to write scripts and things like that. Like, it's just really fun to problem solve creatively. And I think something that I would encourage, or something that I would give myself as a piece of advice earlier on is to be clear about wanting to do that. Because the funny thing to me, when I think back on my mentality when I was first leaving school, was that, working on creative projects and working in really cool teams of people was really what I wanted. I just wasn't sure how to do that. And I think if I had said that more often to more people, that could have been a way for me to get more opportunities and for people to kind of think of me when they knew that roles like that were out there. So that's something that I would say. And then the only other piece of advice I will offer is to just keep it interesting, do things outside of the one role that you really think you want to have. Keep cultivating those other hobbies and those other things that you're passionate about, because you just don't know when that stuff is going to really, really benefit you. And it's so worth it to just have a wider range of experience and a wider range of things that you're passionate about, and just no need to funnel it all into your job. So that's that from me.
That's great. Amanda, how about you? Both, I guess, since Tanya combined the questions, I think that's a great way to do it. Your favorite thing about your job or working at ViacomCBS, and also, what you would tell your 21-year-old self or students just starting out in the business.
Yeah, I think, my favorite part of my job is that there's really an opportunity to be creative, and every day is different. I think a lot of times people think about entertainment and, they think the creativity is only in the production and development side of things. But, there's creativity in all facets of the business. And, I think publicity is one where people don't necessarily think about it as a creative role, but I think, there really is opportunity to think outside the box and do things differently and have fun with it. And every day is different. And that's really my favorite part of the job, is that, no 2 days are the same. You never know what you're going to get. Might be one day you might be at a photo shoot. The next day you are at a talk show. One day you're, just grinding out emails at your desk. But every day is different. So that's really the favorite part of my role. And I think, if I could go back and talk to my 21-year-old self, I would tell her to breathe. I would tell her to relax, that everything will work out, and to just not give up, to just, keep going, trudging forward, but to remind myself to have space to breathe. That would be a big one for me.
Very important. That's great. Thank you so much. Sam, how about you?
I think the favorite part of the job for me is the fact that I get access to cool stuff. That's kind of why we're in media, right? We want to be a part of, you want to work for a big company because big companies have access to cool stuff. So to be able to work on a Super Bowl, to be able to work on March Madness, or going to golf courses I've never even seen or imagined of, and seeing the layout and things like that. Just having that access and being able to be creative within your role, and being able to have a say within what actually gets broadcast out to the world. So I think it's a thing where you want to see your creations in the largest way possible. And whether it's from a small point of view or a large point of view, being able to work in this type of atmosphere, your voice is heard. And that's not something in a lot of different industries, you get your voice heard. So here you actually can have input into product that's broadcast to the world. So for me, it's an exciting thing when we go live on the air and stuff is happening and we have to act on the fly and we're covering up mistakes and then we're showing innovative new technology that no one's ever seen before and it's going viral and stuff like that. Like it's a cool part of the job to be a part of something that not only fills your creative spirit, but it then sparks who knows how many more creative spirits that are watching the broadcast. So for me, it's the favorite part of the job is that. If I could go back and tell my 21-year-old self something, it would be, relax, chill, soak it in, because there's a lot of things that I did when I was 21, a lot of events that I got to do that now I kind of have to think hard to remember if I actually did it or not. Stuff just kind of moves by because we're just in the hustle and the grind of getting to where we want to career-wise, that I didn't kind of soak it in and bask in the moment. So if I had to tell my 21-year-old self anything, it'd be take it all in, because 10 years from now, you might not remember it. 15 years from now, you're definitely not going to remember it. So just, have that wherewithal to take a look around, realize what you're doing and how important it is, or what you're doing, how special, or how it makes you feel, and make sure to keep that with you, to keep it going.
Great advice. And Neil.
Gosh, it's hard to say. So I have many favorite things about the job, but what I will say is I love being surrounded by so many artists and different types of artists and creators all day. And I'm constantly interacting with them. There's constantly these ideas flying around. It's Nickelodeon, so we're all like a bunch of kids. So for me, there's just this energy to that I'm constantly in, and being around all these creators who are doing so many different types of art and so many creative things, it makes me a stronger creative. And I love that, it's constantly opening my mind and changing my perspective. Like I run around like I'm the most woke dude on the planet. And yet, I'll come and talk to somebody about their plan for the next episode of the Casa Grande. I'm like, oh, I never thought about it that way. Oh, we're going to talk about immigration with kids. I never considered how to have that conversation. So I love that my mind is always expanding because of the creativity I'm surrounded by. In terms of advice to my younger self, God, don't do it. No, I'm just kidding. I would say to really trust myself. I would say trust yourself and trust where you are. And what I mean by that is it's easy to come out into the world at different points in life. And I've had so many of these where I'm so concerned with what I don't know and what I don't understand. And it's when I look back, I'm like, wow, like I actually knew a whole lot. I actually have a lot of life experience. I have so much to bring to the table in any space that I occupy. So know that, there's just from the questions you guys have asked, from you showing up here, it's everything you've said has gotten me so excited because you all are already coming to the table with so much. The fact that you are showing up here, the fact that you are asking these questions and thinking about the future, you all are already bringing so much to the table. So no matter where you go or what job you have, they're lucky to have you. And remember that you are valuable for that you are bringing all of you to the table. When you get hired, it is you that they hired. And yes, you may look good on paper and you might know Microsoft Word and all these skills, but at the end of the day, you and what makes you unique is what they are wanting. So never forget that you are your own value. And once you know that, you can do whatever you want. So that would be my advice to myself. Remember how valuable you are and what you are already bringing to the table.
I think that's pretty much the perfect note to close on. I'd like to thank our speakers so much for taking the time to be with us, and thank ViacomCBS for inviting us to be part of their virtual community day. As a reminder, if you'd like to help us continue to provide these free programs, you can help us by making a donation to the center, and the link is in the chat box for that. Even though this academic year is over, we'll still be hosting more office hours, so stay tuned. And you can always catch up on past events via our YouTube channel. And make sure you're signed up for our newsletter and check our website and social channels often, because we have some great internship and other opportunities that we're sharing right now. So we're going to be closing out this meeting. Thanks once again to Tanya, Sam, Neil, and Amanda, and have a great evening, everyone.